Touching down just 100 meters or so from the temple's front entrance, the first thing I noticed was how stunningly opulent it was. Elaborate stained glass windows framed by gold and silver peered out in rows upon the otherwise unblemished white wall. The second thing I noticed was how heavily guarded the place was. Dozens of armed kafil patrolled the perimeter, nearly catching sight of my infiltration team as we ducked behind the remains of a brick wall. For a house of the gods, they've got some weird-looking guard dogs, I murmured beneath my breath, taking a moment to triple-check my rifle's magazine before gesturing for Chot to call on our distraction. Almost instantly from the other side of the temple came a loud blast, as overhead a trio of whitebirds dropped low-yield munitions. As expected, the Providence operatives rapidly abandoned their posts in order to survey the damages and aid any injured among them, leaving behind just a handful of soldiers to guard the front entrance. With about the closest thing we could get to an opening right in front of us, all that was left was to slip inside and secure the artifacts. "I'll handle this," Kirak grunted, gesturing for a Hatanai to keep our rifles trained as he slowly slinked behind low piles of rubble and through the windows of an overturned car. Human genes with kafil military culminated together within the lieutenant to allow for brutal combat efficiency. Before the enemy could even fire their weapons, Kirak had already taken down 4 of the 5. Unfortunately, the last soldier got lucky and was able to sound off a shot. Useless as the attack was against the Kafek super soldier, what it did accomplish was alerting the nearby Providence soldiers to our presence. "Inside, quickly!" shouted Kirak, gesturing for Chot and I to meet him at the temple's front entrance. Combing their efforts, my kafil escorts began their work to force open locked door just as more soldiers rounded the corner to confront us. Aiming my EK rifle at the approaching Providence warriors and firing off multiple 3-round bursts, I was able to keep them behind cover just long enough for Chor and Kirak to bust our way in. Pot shots clinked worthlessly against my armor as I stepped inside behind the other 2 and slammed the doors shut behind me, grabbing onto an opulent nearby chair and wedging it beneath the handles so as to hinder those outside from entering. To call the inside of Providence's temple opulent would be quite the understatement. Gold-framed paintings depicting with relish the torturous punishments awaiting non-Temenian in their supposed afterlife lined the hallways alongside pedestals bearing holy artifacts, mostly weaponry used by their warriors of legend. "Our intel says the artifacts are hidden beneath the main chapel," explained Chot, gesturing with his gun toward the massive set of double doors directly down the hall from us. As we approached the primary worship area, I took a few moments to analyze the holy relics. One in particular caught my eye, a sword supposedly crafted from divine eggshell. Butting the glass with my rifle to retrieve this artifact, I turned the blade over in my hands, admiring, despite myself, its beautiful engravings. The plaque says this weapon dates back to the time of the Temenian gods. "So?" Kirak shrugged, looking upon my discovery with evident confusion. "This material is much too advanced to have been constructed during your Bronze Age," I elaborated, taking a few practice swings with the blade before sliding it through my belt loop. "Looks like the Iragon were right about them harboring alien artifacts. Let's see what else they've got stashed away in here." Approaching the double doors and taking cover on either side of them, Chot and Kirak gestured for me to step aside as they attempted to push open the chapel entrance. Seeing their efforts amounting to no avail, I gestured for them to stop as I took a few paces back and ran up on the door, slamming my foot against the rightmost door to fling it open, revealing inside a dozen armed soldiers all in formation around 3 elaborately dressed kafel. "Stay back!" one of the soldiers shouted to us, visibly disconcerted by my appearance. Naturally, I didn't do that, and as a result, they began to fire. The fight was anticlimactic, to put it bluntly. Try as they might have to take us down, their guns were simply inferior compared to our own, and as a result, we were able to clear them out with relative ease. A shame, honestly. I'd kind of been hoping to use the sword. Drawing the blade sheathed within my belt loop, I approached the 3 unarmed kafil, prompting furious squawks from them as they saw me wielding their supposedly holy artifact. "Demon!" shrieked the nearest of the trio, flapping their arms furiously. "You dare profane that divine weapon with your foul touch?" "I'll give you crazy cultists one thing," I shrugged, lunging forth to level my new blade against his throat. You're an awful brave bunch. The gods look down upon me with pride, beast, he growled. The other two priests stepped forth to try and help him, but were quickly halted in their tracks when Chot and Kirak pointed their guns at them and demanded they freeze. "Where are the artifacts?" I demanded, drawing the blade closer to this Kafel's throat. For all their bluster about an afterlife, these figures didn't seem to be in too much of a rush to get there, given their newfound compliance. Inhaling a shaky breath before sighing in defeat, the archpriest conceded, extending one of his claws toward a nearby statue. "There's a switch behind the base of that one," he confessed, his head hung low in shame. "Flip it and the hidden passage shall open." That answer came out much too easy. As Chot approached the statue to flip its switch, I gestured for him to stop before turning back to the archpriest and shoving him toward the sculpture instead. "How about you flip the switch?" I sneered, keeping my rifle trained upon him as he remained rooted in place. Stepping toward the statue, the archpriest murmured a prayer beneath his breath before reaching behind it to flip the switch. He froze, looking back to us with terrified eyes. "Fine," he sighed, slowly making his way toward the statue opposite to it and flicking a switch on it instead. Immediately upon this action, the room around us shook as behind the main altar a previously hidden door slid open to reveal a staircase leading down. "Thank you," Chot chirped cheerily, slamming the butt of his gun against the skull of the archpriest's friend, followed immediately thereafter by Kirak. Stepping toward the archpriest and placing my hand upon his shoulder, I gently tossed him back toward the room's center, knocking him out as Kirak began tying him up alongside his equally unconscious brethren. Once those three were dealt with, Chot and Kirak approached the hidden passage with their guns raised, prepared for this too to be a trick. Surprisingly, no explosives or traps greeted us as we made our way down the stairs and into a well-lit, seemingly artificial subterranean area. "Holy shit!" I gasped, looking upon the veritable treasure trove of alien artifacts on display here. Weapons, armor, tools, and trinkets decorated this area, though none of them were quite so impressive as what stood in its very center. "What is that?" asked Kirak, cocking his head in confusion at the four interlocked pillars connected to a glowing central platform. Taking a closer look at this device, I recognized many of its key features resembling tools within my own ship. Immediately, my thoughts returned to when I first prototyped the gun, now wielded by Zintrish soldiers. This device operated on the same principle as what I had used to create that first EK model, only several hundred times larger. "It's a fabricator,"